think the reason I've stayed is, I mentioned that like we kind of have like this hard outer shell of like, oh, we're manufacturing, we're tough, you know. But then once you get in it, I think manufacturing is such a brotherly, culture to it. I think we spoke about it a little bit earlier when you asked about my definition, but like I find that the people I meet in manufacturing are some of the nicest people I've ever met in
100%
my life. Like,
our guest has seen what manufacturing looks like from the outside looking in over and over again for 4 years straight. And the outsider perspective is going to be this whole episode because our guest story isn't really about connectivity and hardware. It's about a young engineer who stumbled through the door of an industry by accident and absolutely fell in love with what he found inside. And he spent 4 years trying to figure out why nobody told him it was there. Hello and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. If you're new here, this show is super simple. I sit down with people in manufacturing and we talk about what it's really like to work and live in this space, what the culture feels like, what people have built, what they've broke, and what's made them stay. If you've been on this journey with me before, thank you so much for being back. Looking forward to this conversation. Today, I'm talking with Sam Fritz. Sam, welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. How you doing, man?
hey Jim, thanks for having me, man. I'm very excited to do this. I've always loved my story of how I got into the industry. I always tell people that I'm dating, I'm like, dude, the one thing that you're gonna have to listen to me talk about that you're just not gonna get on board right away is how different things are made and what factories I've been to. Like, God, going to the grocery store with me is the worst.
I love that. And my wife and now children experience the same thing, man. I am just a nerd about all things manufacturing because everything we see and touch is manufactured at some point in its life cycle. So before we get into your story, man, let's have some fun with my first icebreaker question. I don't know if I prepped you on this. If I didn't, it'll be even more fun. If I did, maybe you thought about it. I don't know. If your life were a movie, what genre would it be? Who plays you? And what's the opening scene?
It's definitely comedy. I think, I've made too many mistakes for it to be a thriller because that would imply that there's some sort of outcome at the end, and these are just nonsensical. I would hope Ryan Gosling plays me. I think
All
that's
right.
a little old for me, and I can't grow facial hair. So let's just throw Timothy Chalamet in a buzz cut, see if that works.
There you go. All right. I see that.
Or maybe like a really, really young, like What's Eating Gilbert Grape Leo DiCaprio. Like,
There you go. I
do
can see
that.
that one too. Yeah. Basketball Diaries. Did you ever see that? Is that before your time?
Yeah.
Watch Basketball Diaries. It's like his first movie, and it is an epic fucking film, man. Like, you will
Yeah.
not be disappointed. Check it out. It is like pre What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but it set this kid up for an amazing career in acting.
All right. I probably wouldn't have checked out any movie about basketball because I'm 5'6" and that's just not my sport. Someone was asking me about like March Madness advice, and I was like, "Who do you think you're talking to right now?"
That's awesome. All right, cool. So, young DiCaprio or Ryan Gosling or
Sure.
Timothy Chalamet with a buzz cut. We're comedy. What's the opening scene, man?
Opening scene. I think opening scene would probably be when, and this is a real story. When I was maybe like 5 years old, my mom, I wanted to go hang out with my buddy who lived down at the end of the cul-de-sac, and my dad was doing something on the roof. He was fixing something on the roof, and so then my mom told me, she's like, "Honey, you can't go right now because your father's on the roof and I have to watch him." And so then I didn't take no for an answer. I went anyway. I went to my friend's house. This was before cell phones. So I said to my friend's mom, "Hey, my dad fell off the roof and my mom is driving him to the hospital. So she told me to come and stay here." And I got away with that for 3 hours. She had no idea where I was.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild. That's a great opening scene. That is,
Yeah.
and no offense to any of my other guests, but you just set the bar really high with like an actual story from your life as the opening scene. I don't know if any other guest has done that so far with that icebreaker. So well done, man. I appreciate you. All right. Yeah, there you go, Ursula. If you're listening right now, I'm a big fan, and I'm sorry that your son lied to you 17 years ago, or however old he is. So, Sam, let's talk. Still fun icebreaker question, but not like as like jokey fun. What is your definition of culture? We're on the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. We have to talk about culture at some point.
Mhm.
And what I've learned about culture is it's very individualistic. And so, what is your definition of culture?
Man, that's a good question. I'm pretty bad with words, I would say. I'm not the wordsmith. I was more of a numbers guy, like calculus. So culture to me is it's kind of just, what's the vibe? What's around you? How do people interact with you? How are you perceived? I would think it's a big part of culture because yeah, I mean that's a big part of I think, manufacturing. When I tell people I'm in manufacturing, they're like, "Whoa, you're tough," and I'm like, "No, not really."
5'6", and I lied to my mom when I was 5. Man,
Yeah.
what do you want from me?
And most of my work is it's just calling people. It's, "Hey, how are you doing?" It's not, I'm not like riveting things together. Though I have riveted before in my life. And then yeah, I think it would be really just be what's the community like around you? What does that look like? And I think manufacturing has a really, rock solid kind of like brotherly community rather than
Sure.
like some of the other industries.
Yeah. And I, as you were saying that, something just clicked in me. And I now have to go back through all the episodes that I've been asking that question because I think there is a massive difference generationally how people are answering that question. And so now this is going to be like what I probably do over the weekend is listen to hundreds of fucking hours of podcasts of my own podcast, which is miserable because nobody likes to hear their own voice.
Totally agree.
But I need to like analyze those answers a little bit because yours was very like younger millennial, elder Gen Z answer. Like it's a vibe. It's a community, right? Like that is culture. And I don't know if older generations would see it the same way. So thank you for unlocking something in my brain, and I apologize now for my wife and family for going down a rabbit hole over this weekend of my own shit. So, but great answer, man. I love that answer because it does give a little bit different viewpoint, right? The Gen Z, younger millennial. Um, let's get into your story, man.
Sure.
You went to school to be an engineer.
Yeah, I went to Texas A&M, horns down.
Horns
I
down.
was a mechanical engineer. I come from a family of engineers. Both my parents are German immigrants. My father went to MIT. He worked in oil and gas, worked for ExxonMobil his entire career. He was a one company man, and he raised all his kids to be engineers. And honestly, we were good at it. We were very talented. It made sense to us. I remember in school, math was certainly my most favorite subject. It's crazy when I tell people, but I a genuinely enjoyed it, and b it was like the only sport I was good at. Like I was a mathlete
All
in
right.
school and stuff because I'm competitive. I have two brothers. I was the middle child, and even amongst my two brothers, I was the dumbest by a good
Really?
margin, a healthy margin. They went to Thomas Jefferson High School of Science and Technology, which got rated by U.S. News and World Report as like the number one high school in the nation. And I remember when it came around to my turn to apply to that school, my parents looked at me and they were like, "Sam, I don't think you should apply because I think you're just good at other things." And that crushed me. I remember
Yeah.
initially it did. And that has been my rallying cry for years afterwards because now I look at it and I'm like, I am better at other things. I am a talented public speaker. I am very good at connecting with people and telling stories. And those are valuable skills that can get used in other jobs that they can't do, frankly. Like, I don't think my little brother could do what I do. That being said, I definitely couldn't do what he does. He codes like a maniac and he stares at all these like numbers and algorithms and they all make sense to him. And that's awesome. So they pursued a very like technical background. I, went to school, did very well in high school, went through college and did a lot of internships because I could feel it in me a little bit that I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm good at this engineering thing, and because I'm good at it, I'm going to do it. But then I kept on doing these internships where I was like, well, sitting in an office and behind a desk all day and not talking to people kind of bums me out. I had a calendar block in my calendar at 4 p.m. I would walk the office and just chit chat with people because it's what I love to do. And so then I was telling this to one of my mentors, Christian Solorzano. It was during COVID. I was doing a virtual internship with Train, the air conditioning company, and he told me, he was like, "I think you should try sales. Like if you're." I remember I had so many strategies of how to stay awake at my desk when I was an engineer, which that makes it sound like I'm trashing the engineering
No,
profession.
no, no.
It's a good profession. It just, for me, like the spreadsheets and the CAD and stuff, it just would put me to sleep, and I'd have to like drink tea, use a standing desk, use these like Pomodoro timers. But then he recommended that I try out sales. I did it as my final internship. I did a sales internship. It was the lowest paying internship I had. And I kind of went into it like, boy, what is this going to be like? And I ended up finding, like, first of all, I was very much under the impression that sales is just, it's like used cars. You're going around and you're like, I can get you a better deal. You just buy my cables. They're cheaper. But then when I got into, I was still working for Train at the time. I did a technical sales internship here in Chicago, and I realized, dude, these engineers that are designing buildings, they have so much on their mind that really these salespeople are working with them to take a load off their mind and saying, like, look, like you don't need to size this thing. You don't need to figure out how you're going to get it through all the doors. We'll do that. We'll tell you what you need. We'll give you a price on it. And then that's how you can work as like a consultative sales engineer. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I want to be able to work on a variety of different projects. I want to be able to talk to engineers as much as possible. And I still want to use my technical knowledge. It was definitely something that I leaned on, early in my career to separate myself, was just the things that I knew. Like the reason I got into HVAC was because I really enjoyed thermodynamics. And I thought for a little while there, I was going to be an HVAC guy. You might be talking to the bad boy HVAC if had things gone a little different.
I do want to touch on this whole bad boy of connectivity thing, but we'll get there in a little bit for sure.
Sure, we will. So I was doing that HVAC sales internship, and it kind of just made me realize, what kind of a broad profession sales is, and that you can kind of take it very a la carte. Like you can treat it like a used car guy and just go around and try and offer the best price and, well, lowball people, or
Mm-hmm.
you can go to your engineers, establish relationships by asking them questions about their design, about their building, about what they're doing. And that translated very well to, factory automation, because I go to my different, OEMs or machinery builders, or now that I'm at Banner, I go to a lot of end users too. And I ask them about their processes. It's the only way to really start a conversation. Because guess what? Every company I've ever worked for, they have so much stuff that
Mm-hmm.
I could not just like pull out, I mean, literally, like these manufacturers, they typically have like a textbook of all of their different parts and like the specs and stuff. And if I just plop that down on the table, wouldn't sell anything. I would never sell anything at all. So I always just start by asking them about, what are your machines doing? What are your goals here? What are you producing here? Where are your bottlenecks? And then I can start leaning on like my, expertise. Unfortunately, I was a mechanical engineer, and now all I do is sell electrical equipment. So that was a little, a bit of I don't want to call it a mistake, just, a workaround, because I still use some of my mechanical knowledge. I'm just not doing like, fluid dynamics or anything. So, when I was able to start, really diving into the technical aspects of these projects and show my value a little bit there, show what I'm capable of, I think that went a long way for customers to start trusting me, start leaning on me, and start calling me back and stuff like that. I remember to one of my first sales calls, I was way up in the North Woods of Wisconsin, and you book a lot of calls over the phone, and I have a pretty deep voice, and I called this guy. I was in the lobby, and he pokes his head out. He looks around. He does a real comical like, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking for an adult." And I was like,
No.
yeah, and I was 23 at the time, and I looked like a kid. I still do, but like, man, Actually, I just tried on my suit from prom, still fits. It's crazy. He when he said that to me, I knew I kind of have to separate myself. He was definitely a more interesting customer. I was also working for Keyence at the time, and he called me a Keyence clone because I did look kind of like, when you wore the Keyence like jacket and polo. That's kind of what every Keyence guy did, and they have a very large workforce. But I knew in that moment, there's you can look at that as like a bad thing, or you can look at it as an opportunity. I looked at it as an opportunity to see if I could change his opinion about me. And I honestly, I couldn't tell you if I did or not. I can't remember exactly how that went, but I do remember that I just asked as many questions as I could and tried to show him a little bit about what I'm about. And that, like, dude, I geek out on thermodynamics and material science. What do you geek out on? And then he'll tell me, like, this probably a different sales call, but another guy just talked my ear off about like pneumatics and how cool he thinks pneumatic actuation is. And man, when I sold servo motors, you could get into some conversations with people about their motion applications. I was working with a guy he was just wrapping wire, and he talked me through the math of like when you wrap wire, like how many, I forget what the word is, but like how many spools do you get like per inch, and like all the math of like the helix behind it. And he was having a great time. And then, because even though that stuff went way over my head, he ended up, becoming my biggest customer that year.
That's
So
awesome.
it's
That's awesome.
and when I start like getting into that technical stuff, that's where I have the most fun. Like when I get into those weeds, that's what's crazy to me is so often people look at me and they're like, "You're a sales guy. You don't want to get into the weeds." And I'm like, "No, I do. Let's go." Like, what are we talking about? And man, like presses, man, I could go on for a while about presses. I love them, man. I love when I see them, those huge things. And so that's what
Make the
gets.
the floor shake.
Oh yeah, make the
Yeah.
floor shake. The Weber Stevens grills get made here in Illinois. That was one of the most coolest manufacturing sites I'd ever seen. They had special light curtains made just for their presses because they were like 6,000-ton presses or something like that, and that
Wow.
just shakes those
Yeah.
those safety curtains so much. So I mean, and as you can see, like I get excited just talking about it
Yeah.
because it makes me just look at the world a different way. I have a view of the city right now, and I look at this so often where I see like glass panels, and I'm like, man, all of those need to be manufactured. And I wonder how they get manufactured. Are those like a custom thing that's like done to size, or are they standard? I wonder where they came from. Did they come from the United States, or did they get built somewhere else? So like it just that idea of where things are created, where things come from, just drove me so far in my career. It got me to be constantly curious.
So what was the moment that you're like, "Man, this is the industry for me?" Like, because you weren't looking for this industry. You weren't looking. I mean, it sounds like you weren't even sure that you wanted to be adjacent to manufacturing. You're looking at HVAC, right? Like, at what point did you say, "Man, manufacturing, this is the shit. This is the place that I need to be. These are my people."
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I did when I was getting out of college, I really only knew I wanted to move to Chicago. I'd moved around a lot, and I felt like the Midwest was just calling me. And I had applied to a lot of HVAC companies, and they were just kind of like dragging their feet, playing around with me. I didn't get an offer from Train. And then the one company I applied for was Keyence, and they were super straightforward. They have a fantastic hiring and onboarding process and interview process. They did a very, very good job. And so then, honestly, for that reason, I took a job with them. I was like, they seem like they have a very well work like a well-oiled machine. It is true. They do extremely good training. They have a very well-built model. When I got there, though, I did think to myself, I was like, is this the industry for me? Is manufacturing really what I want to do? So to say a moment where it really like clicked might be hard, but you know what? I think it would probably have been I was not out on the road yet, but I went on a joint sales call as a Keyence guy to Worthington Cylinders. And I hope I'm not violating any NDAs by saying that I went there, but I was just seeing all those propane cylinders getting welded together and flying off of that line. I remember thinking like, whoa, these are some big boys, nuts. I didn't realize just how many propane cylinders there are in the world. But then you kind of start walking around and you're standing outside the gas station. There are like 18 to 20 propane cylinders there. And then you're passing a grocery store. Well, that had 18 to 20. And then I passed another gas station. And it starts adding up in your head. And you're like, actually, there's no way that that facility could even handle the entire US demand. Like it only probably does a little bit of a region. And that's when I started really like getting into manufacturing and like seeing how things were built. I think the other thing that got me into it, and this came much, much later. I didn't get a chance to do this at Keyence. I did it at Mer, was seeing how my stuff gets manufactured. Like when you work in factory automation and then you get to see how your stuff, that's like
Yeah.
inception kind of.
Yes.
And so yeah, seeing that just made me, it really gives you like a palpable look at like, oh, this is how it's done.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've been in a ton, hundreds probably of facilities across Illinois, Chicagoland area, right? Um, what do you notice when you first walk in? Like what is the first thing that you see when you walk in the door?
I was always a big fan of first of all, when I worked at Keyence, we had interns come through the Chicago office, and everybody hated taking them out on calls, and I loved it. I was like, this is an opportunity for me to be on my best behavior and trying to deliver the best sales calls, and then also makes you think about what you do a little bit more. And like if you're kind of like almost like teaching it, I think you do a better job. And one of the things I always encourage them to do is when you're in the lobby, look at what they have in the lobby, because the lobby is where customers go to brag. You know, are they putting their parts out there, or are they putting their awards out there? What are their awards? Are there awards like I'm a certified FANUC integrator, or is it we're one of the best places to work in Wisconsin or something like that? So that's what I always try to notice first is what are they talking about? Do they have samples up there? Do they have projects that they've done? Do they have pictures? Do they have videos of applications? What are they proud of? Because that's ultimately what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make them better at what they do.
That's awesome. One of my favorite posts that came off of your LinkedIn, and I was just trying to find it and I couldn't re-find it. Something about a rat's nest wiring problem that was a cultural symptom, not just a wiring problem. Let me make sure I have that right. I
I
thought
think
it
I
was
know
your.
which post you're talking about. Might have been something I reposted from a good friend of mine, Colin Cartwright,
Okay.
because he's been doing a lot on LinkedIn, posting really good stuff about like decentralized automation. But yeah, like I think
I scroll guest profiles late at night, so I wish it was yours. Now I'm feeling like I blew that, and I'm just gonna have to delete this.
all right. Well, I am. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, you have shit like that. Whatever. Um, all right. Well, let's get back into talking about you, Sam. Um, you brought up Wisconsin, best places to work. What are they proud of? Is it the products? Is it how the culture? Is that what they're proud of? Are they proud of their people? When you walk into a place where the culture is not great for the people there, right? And
Mhm.
again, culture is very individualistic, but can you tell when you walk into a place and the culture's like misfiring?
I think if you had asked me this question last week, I would have said, yeah, of course, dude. Like, you can tell when people are happy. And like people also like open up to me because I don't work in their company. And so I think they sometimes feel like, I can tell him that like, man, it's been tough. It's been rough around here. But this week I saw a buyer at an account where I was like, oh, you work here now? Like, that's crazy. And then he told me he was working super long hours and really, really hard at his last company. So I would say it depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But if there's a good culture, it pops out at you. I mean, I'm thinking right now of I don't know if I should name drop them, but SourceLink Solutions, man, they have a great culture because whenever I go there, they're always laughing. I've never been on a sales call there where they aren't joking and poking fun at each other. And it looks like a bunch of brothers building machines, they're joking, their jokes are definitely like brother level jokes where it's a little like roasty, it's a little mean, but I'll be honest, it's the only sales call I've ever seen a grown man tickle another grown man. So that's a good culture. Like they're having fun.
Oh my god, I did not have a story about grown men tickling each other on my bingo card for this interview, man. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, and so I think, a good culture, pops out at you. I think honestly, like the bad cultures are probably a little bit more silent, where it's very corporate, it's very professional, because you don't want to, project that image even to your suppliers that things aren't things aren't going smoothly here or something like that.
So let's talk about this personal branding, the bad boy of connectivity. Where did this nickname come from? Is that like self-imposed or did somebody tell you that you are the bad boy of connectivity?
It was self-imposed, and it was because I was at Mer Electronic, and one of my competitors is just super big in the IO and connectivity space. She's worked in the Chicagoland area for her company for 16 years. She knows everybody. She knows where all the bodies are buried. She's done a very, very, very good job for her company. And then we hired their Kansas City guy over to Mer, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you got a tough job. You're going against the Michael Jordan of sales." And that just rung in my ears for weeks of like, man, I'm going against the Michael Jordan of sales. And then I thought about that like Giannis Antetokounmpo quote where he's like, Jordan won 6 championships. Were the other 9 years a failure? And I was like, and that made me think, Jordan was good. The Michael Jordan of sales, very good, but doesn't always win. How do I beat Michael Jordan? And I thought, who beat Michael Jordan more than anybody? The Detroit Pistons, the bad boys. And
Yes.
I thought to myself, if I'm gonna beat her, I'm not gonna be able to beat her by playing her game. That's not how the Pistons beat Jordan. Jordan had an electric offense. They beat him with grueling defense. And so I decided I was gonna kind of lean into the personal branding thing. I had this bleached blonde haircut, and I was like, dude, I'm D Rod. I'm the D Rod of connectivity. I'm the bad boy of connectivity.
That's
And
awesome. And for somebody who, we opened this show talking about, your 5'6" basketball is not like we have talked
yeah,
a lot about basketball in this episode for somebody who says they don't know much about basketball. That's awesome.
yeah, it's I do like to know enough to be dangerous so that I can talk to people about what they want to talk about. I was the same with baseball. I wasn't the biggest fan of baseball, but I always knew, how well are the Cubs doing? How well are the Sox doing? Because that's just so many conversations that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that origin story for this for your nickname, right? Because I'm sure there are some people who look at it and they're like, like who the fuck does this guy think he is, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
you have like that is the coolest reason to call yourself the bad boy of connectivity. You were chasing the Jordan. You knew you had to be the Bill Laimbeer, the Dennis Rodman of the Pistons in order to make that happen. So I love that, man.
And it gets discovered by people outside the industry. Like my friends on my volleyball team, I don't know how they got there. I don't know what they were doing on LinkedIn looking up my name, but they found me and they were clowning me. They were like, "What are you doing? Why do you do that?" They're like, "Are you That's the most embarrassing thing ever." And I told them this. I was like, "First of all, I don't do anything on LinkedIn to get laid. Like that is strictly business. And
Yeah, not the
secondly,
right forum.
not the right form. And secondly, my customers love it.
Yeah.
My customers, my employers, my coworkers, they love it. I remember when I walked into Banner on one of my first days. Banner has a connectivity unit that they're aggressively expanding. I walked into their new production facility in Minnesota. Dana Holmes, leader of their business. I don't know if she's a leader, but she's a product manager over there. Looks at me, she's like, "What's up, bad boy?" I was like, "I'm home. This is where I'm supposed
That's
to be."
awesome. That's
And yeah,
phenomenal, man.
guys out in my customers out in the suburbs and everywhere, they love it. They think it's funny. And I just, I often think that we pass up so many opportunities to just enjoy the little things in life. Like when I throw something into a trash can, I always try to drill it from deep. Another basketball thing. I
Yeah.
try to shoot a 3-pointer and then I celebrate it. Even if I had the worst day in the world, I'm still going to celebrate the tiny little wins that make life fun. And dude, LinkedIn, it is not that serious. Just
No,
have a little fun with it.
absolutely. 100%, man. And you do a great job of building your personal brand. I mean, that's how we connected was LinkedIn. And I love that. I love seeing younger people on that platform and making it more fun, right? Because it LinkedIn's gone through this weird evolution of itself as a platform. Like it used to be like, hey, I'm looking for a job. That was it. Then it was like, I'm looking to sell something. And that was yeah, sell something or find a job. And now it's like people are opening up and being more vulnerable and sharing more of their personas and personalities on LinkedIn, which makes business more human in itself. Like it's and you're doing a great job of building out that brand. And now I'm so excited to know about the bad boy connectivity. So
Yeah.
um
Do you
man, we're
remember
in
how
an
we connected?
I don't.
I love that story. Well, because I was just having fun with it and I was scrolling. I saw you had posted something through the manufacturer connector and I saw your picture. I don't know if it's still this way. It's you in a tub of ping pong balls.
Yes.
And I knew exactly where that was because it's a common post pack expo hangout spot. It's a place called Spin. It's downtown in Chicago, and I had a picture in that exact same tub of ping pong balls, and I had no idea who you were. I honestly do. I'll be honest. I didn't even read the post that you posted. Didn't mind. I just connected with you, and I was like connecting with you purely because I also have been in that tub of ping pong balls. And
That's
when you
right.
accepted my connection request, I sent you the picture
You
because I
did.
thought that was the funniest thing that we both had just identical pictures.
I love that. But you like you're very active on LinkedIn. You're and what I've appreciated about you, Sam, in our interactions is you're also not afraid to ask for like, hey, who else should I be connected to? And that's been a really cool thing because I have had to struggle with this a little bit. I am getting older. The gray is coming out in my beard a lot more than it once was, right? And I used to be the youngest guy in all the rooms, right? I was you 20 years ago. And I didn't have tools like LinkedIn 20 years ago to but I would ask people in my local market. 20 years ago I was selling in the ports of Long Beach and
Mhm.
the port of Los Angeles, and who else do I need to know, right? You've done a great job of setting aside some of that pride, that ego, and just, hey, who else do I need to know? And you're just a really awesome young dude. So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to show everybody how much fun manufacturing is because I think that was maybe a part I glossed over in like my college experiences. I was a mechanical engineer and they never talked to me about factory automation. I think the most like, manufacturing they talked about is they explained like, cold rolling versus like sand casting and injection molding, but I never heard the word PLC. Automation was never even discussed, and it was maybe because A&M has a different major called industrial distribution that focuses on that. But so many of my friends, I see where they're at now. They were one of my connections from A&M. She was a mechanical engineer. She's now senior automation engineer at Frito-Lay. And I'm like,
Wow.
we're ending up in these industries, but they didn't really talk to us about it ahead of time. They didn't, prep us for it. And dude, I have been to Douglas Machine. I have seen the Frito Lay machines. My God, those things are cool. Those
They
things are
are
cranking them
awesome.
out.
Yes. So
So
let's talk about that a little bit, right? This industry for the last 25, 26 years has talked about a talent shortage, right? And the whole trope, nobody wants to work anymore, but that's been around. I did some research. The earliest like newspaper article that had the headline "Nobody wants to work anymore" was like 1817 or something like that. Like it goes back a long way. Older generations always think younger generations are lazy and nobody wants to work, right? So, but this industry has been talking for 30 years because we did our something to ourselves when we lost all of our trade education in high schools, right? We removed those programs when we started offshoring. Like we did this to ourselves, and we've talked for the last nearly 30 years about a talent shortage. You're the exact person that this industry is trying to find, but you had to find it by accident, right? What does that tell you? How could we be doing this better or different?
I mean, to me, that's I think what we could do better is we could make it seem fun because I think there's a degree of like we in manufacturing, we like to appear tough. Like we're gruff, and there's almost a degree of like superiority of like all these new kids, these new Gen Zers, they could never do what I do. And I'm like, no, they definitely could, dude, because you were that guy at one time too. Like we were all kids at one point. And there are some hardworking, young guys out there. There are, thirsty, innovative people out there. There are also some lazy ones. Yes, that happens. And I think that those are just what you kind of focus on if that's where your head's at. It's a degree of like manifestation. So I think really what we have to do and show is the cool stuff, dude. I had never seen a 6-axis robot until I got to Keyence. And at that point I had worked in the Tyler, Texas manufacturing plant for residential air conditioners, but they didn't really have a bunch of 6-axis robots. So I love it when I see at Pack Expo they have those like student days where they have kids just running around the trade show halls, because I'm like, this is what makes it cool. This is what makes it awesome. I honestly think, I'm not the biggest fan of humanoid robots because I think like, dude, I've seen how hard it is to commission a robot arm, and that thing has two robot arms, a leg, and two robot legs. It's that those things are going to be difficult to get work done with. But I think they're giving visibility to, hey, dude, manufacturing is bleeding. They're the bleeding edge of technology. I think so often we get caught up in like software and AI and the cloud and the internet and blah 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 blah. Dude, you ever seen like the wings of fighter jets get made, or just even like a panel or something like that? Turbine blades, how they're one solid crystal of metal. It's that kind of stuff that's really cool that like we're not really talking about in college. Like when we talk about manufacturing in college, we're talking about sand casting. And I'm like, no, guys, let's show some robot arms. Honestly, I have never seen how windows are made, and I want to see that. Like I feel like that would be cool. Just glass. Like how is that even made? When they take like those big car chassis and they like, dip them and like roll them.
Check
So
out, is it so there's a company here in Arizona, but there's also they have manufacturing locations. They're US manufacturing. I'll send you their link. They may have a location by you, but they're a window manufacturer. It is a really, really cool process. There's a ceramics company that I've been into. Watching how they make ceramic like things is wild. Like my entire career was metal and metal removal, primarily like
Mhm.
machinists and fabrication and things of that nature. So watching other processes is just mind blowing to me. We'll definitely talk about some places you can go visit there locally that will blow your fucking mind. Sam, why have you stayed in this industry? Right, you're young. You're a very personable human being. You're charismatic. Why have you stayed in this industry?
I ask myself that sometimes because, I mean, come on, we all have bad days.
Hell yeah, man.
And then sometimes you drove all the way out for some like sales call way into the sticks, into the boonies of Illinois. You get there and your contact like blows you off, and you're driving back and you're like, golly, what am I doing? And I think the reason I've stayed is, I mentioned that like we kind of have like this hard outer shell of like, oh, we're manufacturing, we're tough. But then once you get in it, I think manufacturing is such a brotherly culture to it. I think we spoke about it a little bit earlier when you asked about my definition, but like I find that the people I meet in manufacturing are some of the nicest people I've ever met in
Percent.
my life. Like, I there that when I moved from one company from my last job to at Banner now, I had a lot of people, reach out before I had even announced anything on LinkedIn and said, "Hey man, like you were always so passionate about engineering technology. I hope you like land on your feet." They didn't know that I had already accepted another offer. And then when I told them I went to Banner, they were like, "Dude, that's awesome. Like we love that stuff." And so that kind of brotherly love has kept me around. I think another thing that's really kept me is what we do is physical, tangible. I can touch it, feel it, use it, play with it. Like one of the things I'm working on this weekend is I have a washer dryer unit in my apartment here that does not have a buzzer when it goes off. It does not make a noise to let me know it's done, and that drives me
Okay.
crazy
Yep.
because I just want to hear it and know that it's done. So I am using Banner equipment. I use a vibration sensor, a little DXM controller, and a little audible to basically say, hey, when this thing stops shaking, just give me a little noise. Let me know.
Little
You
beep.
know, a little beef, little something to let me know. And that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, dude, if I was selling HR software, like, man, I could, file a W-2 or whatever. I could 10 nines those words, like I could do that
Those
because
words.
yeah, because the siren song of it's software, it's ever present in manufacturing. I cannot tell you how many people I've seen jump from manufacturing to like an Oracle to a Paycom. Salesforce is here in Chicago. Tons of people go to Salesforce, but I just feel like with those things, I'm not doing something tangible. I'm not doing something real. There's no better feeling than going back to a customer and being like, hey, like, how's that project wrapping up? And then they show you how they're using your sensor or what you did or what you help them design. They show it to you, you see it, and it makes something real. What was crazy to me one time is I was working on a project with I think it was called Double Good Popcorn. It was just like basic case loading, and they were putting these small bags of popcorn into bigger boxes. And I didn't really know what Double Good Popcorn does. I was like, all right, it's popcorn. And then my buddy, who's a teacher, hit me up and he was like, hey man, we're trying to raise money for my football team that I coach. We sell popcorn, and it was Double Good Popcorn. And that to me was just like this full circle moment of like, oh, like, there's good impact that I have out there that allowed them
That's
to,
awesome.
raise some funds for their team. And I just don't think you get that in software. And then I think there's also just a degree of software that's a little cutthroat. Things change so quickly there. Teams expand really fast, teams cut down really fast. In manufacturing, I can't say manufacturing is the most stable environment in the world. I mean, the automotive industry shows us that, but it's definitely a bit more stable in the sense that, like, dude, things are still gonna have to get made. I'll be honest, I have not been worried for 1 second that AI will take my job. I can tell you right now, controls engineers are not worried that AI is taking their job. And software engineers are. Coders are thinking like, man, look, Claude Code can write my code. But dude, at the end of the day, there's AI. I don't think we'll ever get to a point of commissioning robots, setting up conveyor lines, because it's so much more complicated than you could ever imagine. And troubleshooting, my God, that is a dark art that some people are blessed and gifted with, and that's really, I mean, that's a hero's work right there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's so many, and this touches on exactly what you're just talking about. There's so many people in these plants, in these facilities, in these shops who are proud of what they build, right? And yet they don't feel seen. They don't feel like the average American knows exactly what they do. And what I do for a living is I go into these manufacturers and I help them tell their story, right? I was in a facility yesterday and I asked a guy who had been repairing motors for CNC machines, and he's been doing it for 30 years. And I asked him, what is the thing that he is most proud of? And he told me, and he started tearing up. Like the amount of emotion and feeling that exists. And this is that guy that is gruff, right? He is a burly dude, and he has old man strength. He could kick my ass in less than a second. Like this guy was a beast. And he started tearing up talking about how proud he was to do what he does, and that tangible aspect at the end of the day. And I think that will help get more young people also interested in this, right? Is we have to talk about what we're proud of doing in this industry, right? I think that I my approach used to be I'd go into high schools and I'd ask, "Hey, who in this room likes sneakers?" And every fucking teenage hand goes up, right? I then would ask about, well, do you know how the soles are made of sneakers? And I talk about the tool and die process, right? And how these dies are cut using these precision tools, and then they're sent to shoe manufacturer, and they, pour the injection molding stuff into there, right? All the things. which is neat and it's technical and it brings manufacturing to what they do. But if I were to go in with a guy who makes that die and that guy talks about or woman talks about how proud they are to make shoes that are then used by pro athletes, used by high school students, that's a different level of pride. And I think that just kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying, that's what we need to do more of is bring out the pride that exists in this industry.
But yeah, I think that exists in this industry a lot more than say, specifically the software and tech industry. Because I'll be honest, my little brother, he works for Amazon and he loves it, and I hope they don't hear this and hold it against him. But yeah, I don't think he's super passionate about middle mile delivery. I don't think he sits there and he sees like an Amazon package, on his neighbor's doorstep and think like, yeah, way to go, guys, got it there on time. Whereas I love Weber Stevens Grills, man, because they employ probably half the city of Huntley out there, and they do some really, really good solid work. I buy Haribo gummy bears, A, because they're my favorite, but B, because they got that huge factory up in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Kinder Buenos get built in or get made in Illinois, and so I'll happily, buy those as well. It's that kind of like, community and camaraderie that we feel. Like, honestly, dude, if it was cheaper and an easier decision to make, I'd buy a Rivian and I'd drive that, because I'm a big fan of their cars and big fan of what they got going on. Unfortunately, just don't have $80,000.
It is slightly outside of my price bracket.
Right. There are two though.
I know that it's
It's
beautiful, man.
tempting. It's
It is
tempting.
so tempting. Sam, what's the future of manufacturing look like in your eyes?
That's a good question. I think it's loaded with automation because I do believe that there's a big part of manufacturing that people don't enjoy. I saw a very automated machine that was folding corrugated cardboard into some sort of box for something. And there was a guy who just stood there and just loaded it for like 6 or 8 hours a day. I don't know. I'm sure they have like ergonomic rules and like shift changes there. So I see it with like a lot of automation, but I think the future of automation holds a lot of trade knowledge. I don't really think that people getting into manufacturing should necessarily go to a 4-year college because I'll be honest, like I love my mechanical engineering degree, but I came, I'm a German American. In Germany, many people go to trade schools there. Many people go to trade schools for automation technology. I can't
Yeah.
tell you. I have a buddy out there who would send me pictures of his panels all the time. So I think there's going to be a lot more trade folk where you're going to see some of the most knowledgeable people on the floor where you're going to be like, oh my God, like this guy knows how to run a business. This guy knows how to run a factory floor. He must have been, a Harvard grad or something like that. And then he's like, nah, dude, Carbondale, Southern Illinois, And you're like, hell yeah. All right. Okay. Like, you go, girl.
Yeah.
And I'll say that I think, and maybe I hope this. I see a lot of change in the industry, but I hope that it involves more women. I've seen some very very impressive stuff from the women that I've worked with in this industry. I actually just got to this week met with a woman who's inspired me, Karen Hodgson. She works for Movu Robotics. She's their director of controls engineering now, and
No
she's kind of
shit.
jumped around to get to that point. She's extremely knowledgeable. When she left her last company, they called her because had some project where they were like, look, only Karen knows, only Karen can help us out. And so it's those type of people that make me think they're setting an example. Look, if the tech industry is loaded with women, and I think that if they saw what manufacturing can be, how cool it can be, how not dirty, grubby, nasty it is, but how cool it is, I think they would join in. I think they'd
I
jump
love
on.
it. I love it. Sam, last question I ask every guest. What haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I honestly think you asked me everything. This was it was really rewarding to do this because this is just like something that sits with me. I don't even really tell my friends about it that much because I don't think they really care about my career and how cool I think manufacturing is. But you know, I guess the one question I wish you'd ask me is like, what would it take for me to leave manufacturing? And there's a part of me that says I don't think you could take it from me. So like I do stand up comedy in my free time. That is my passion. And a lot of people, they have these, a lot of my other stand-up comedians, they have these goals where they're like, I want to do Lincoln Hall. I want to do, whatever that theater is called that has the big Chicago sign and all the lights.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's called, to be
Right.
honest. That's not my goal. My goal, I want to do the Pack Expo show. They had Nate Bargatze the other, maybe it was 2 years ago. And I just saw that and I was like, that's the show I want to do, because I want to get in that room and I want to joke around with a bunch of other manufacturing people about a bunch of inside jokes that only they're gonna get,
Yes.
like only
Yes.
they're gonna understand how often a Keyence guy calls you, only they are gonna know, how
Yes.
often if you're in an OEM, how often your phone rings at the end of the month, that kind
Yes.
of stuff. And so yeah, I just don't think, like, even if I did chase the dream of showbiz or whatever that ends up being, I would always try to go back to my roots of manufacturing. I have tons of jokes about it. I'm the biggest fan of it, and again, I really enjoy the people and the customers that I work with. I've always said that. I'll never stop saying it, and I hope to call on these customers for the rest of my life, to be
I
honest.
love it. Sam, I'm going to extend this invitation to you right now, because regardless of if you go to IMTS, you're in Chicago, so you'll be
Mhm.
in the area.
Yeah.
IMTS is coming up this fall. I'm every day going at the end of each day going to be hosting a episode of Industrial Storytellers. That's my show where I sit around and drink copious amounts of alcohol and tell stories with friends. I'd love for you to be one of my guests one of the days that week. You don't have to drink alcohol to be a guest on there. It helps you like weather my storm, weather who I am. But if you're not a drinker, I will provide non-alcoholic whatever you're looking for. But
Well, unfortunately, I'm a
we're gonna have
German
a
American. It's only goes one way.
we're going to have a different type of booze every day in the booth bottle that we're just going to put in between you, me, the other four people. It's going to be a party of six sitting around a table with a bottle of booze in the middle, and each of us has a glass, and we're going to just tell stories for an hour. I'd love for you to be a part of that. I'd also love to build out an event with you where we put on a comedy night and you are one of the performers. I would love to do that. Let's work on that
Absolutely.
offline here. I think that would be a fucking blast, man. So Sam, thank you so much for being on.
Dude, thanks for
Really,
having me, man.
this was such a cool conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sam Fritz. If you liked this conversation, and if you didn't, you're dead inside. But if you like this conversation, share it with somebody who gives a shit about this industry. And while you're at it, please rate and review the show. Give it 5 stars. Say Sam is hilarious or Jim is not funny, whatever you want to say. It's not about my ego. It's not about Sam's ego. It's to help other people find this episode, to find this show, so that we can all share more stories about the pride that we have about being part of this industry. Until next time, keep making things.